Yes, yes. Welcome to the ancient world of tabletop games. I am Agamemnon from the historical documentary Time Bandits. This is a report from a fugitive. Time for a few late additions to the series on beginner boxes and starter sets for role-playing games. This is a return to Dungeons & Dragons with the Essentials kit. Although the production values in this box are higher than the ones in the starter set, it didn't cost much more. That starter set has been out for half a decade, predating the publication of 5th edition D&D, and is still selling. So the inevitable price reduction happened over time. Once D&D heads into edition number 6, expect all this material to suddenly be labelled rare and shoot back up in price, if you're determined to buy a physical copy. This one you can pick up for £20 to £25 with postage, but obviously look out for discount deals. As I put this video together, the Essentials kit has been on sale in America for a few months. It landed on Scottish shores as the weather turned from autumn to autumn. I waited a wee bit to pounce on a deal and started this series before the box arrived. Well, here it is, and I've gutted the creature to examine its gaming innards. Before we get into that, I'll cover a few wayward mentions. What are starter sets, beginner boxes and kits that are considered essential, and who are they for? This D&D starter set was a herald, marching in front of 5th edition's launch, so it was for veteran players and helped them gain a start in the forthcoming system. Would they engage with the new edition and go on to buy the core rulebooks when those were published? Yes, all products are marketing tools. That starter set aimed to coax D&D players back, if those players were the ones who loudly walked away from 4th edition into the beckoning arms of Pathfinder. The set also accidentally serves as an introduction for players new to the game. Is the scope of the adventure in there too ambitious for beginner players? No matter what you sit down to play for the first time, that game has the capacity to overwhelm. Have an experienced player run the introductory material for new players if possible. For my first session, I was given a loan of a rulebook to familiarise myself with play beforehand, and I soon picked it up at the table on the day. Starter sets are tasters of full games. If you don't like what's on offer, you saved yourself from diving deep into hefty rulebooks. The internet is there for examples of play, free files, critical commentaries and reviews. In the digital age, it is still possible to come to a game from a position of isolation, cut off from hobby examples, though that is unlikely. I can think of one example, introducing elderly individuals to gaming very late in the day. It's never too late. Beginner boxes are for the inexperienced and the veteran alike. If you stormed off at the mere sight of 4th edition D&D and were lured back by the siren call of yet another version of the old warhorse, then you're playing the same game as the rookie who just sat down with an unopened packet of dice. What's not here? The Star Wars boxes, at last count all 4 of them. I'll happily run a role-playing game with polyhedral dice sets, and I'll gladly play board games featuring custom dice, but I draw the line at using custom dice in an RPG. That move I consider exclusionary. If people turn up at the table without dice, you hand out spare poly sets. That's less likely to happen with dedicated dice. So yes, it's an inclusion thing. A board game comes with all the custom dice required for play, but that's not the case with an RPG that uses very specialised dice. Sharing limited dice around the table back and forth is a pain. In gaming, we have spare polyhedral dice sets for 3 reasons. First, gamers are superstitious and will burn out one set of dice. After a pit stop, the new dice are fitted in place ready to roll. Second, players like having dice. Third, there's always that one player who forgets to bring dice every single time, and I'm not naming names, just don't be that player. I'm looking at you, that player. Yes, I often wondered what ambulance crews would think of me at the accident site trying to haul embedded dice from my fragile bones. Gamers carry dice in case a random game breaks out of a sudden. Pack emergency dice securely. There's a risk of causing a mighty cascade, a cacophony of colliding random number generators when visiting the dentist. Avoid this risk. Anyway, the closest I flew to running Star Wars was in using this discount deal adventure by West End Games, and I ran it as a Cthulhu game. According to my notes, only Obi Traction made it out alive after defying the odds to steal a shuttle in a cheese-laden daring escape. That was an ultra-violent, adult-rated Star Wars adventure with death and destruction running through the main cast like bantha fodder through an Ewok. Oh, how we laughed. What else isn't here? I don't mention anyone casually in a video, even if I seem to mention someone casually. In my video on game organisers for Clans of Caledonia, I mentioned Mike Pondsmith, who did a bit of work on that West End Games version of Star Wars. I'm not saying Mike is single-handedly responsible for cyberpunk-style role-playing games. He lost his hands in a particularly vicious paper-cut accident while turning the pages of the world's glossiest RPG rulebook. Mike had both hands cybernetically replaced. They are now titanium buzzsaw attachments, chromed out and signed up for action. And that is a role-playing fact. Why isn't the Cyberpunk game here? The Cyberpunk Red Jumpstarter Kit is a beginner box, a starter set, but it's a case of file not found. It's the year 2019, and I thought I had a physical copy of this game, 2020, sitting on my shelves, but no, I had to hack the interwebs to download an image into MeatSpace. This game is heading back into the cyberworld in a new edition, and as a computer game, with Keanu Reeves as Johnny Silverhand. Colour me stunned. The vice president of the astronomy club is going to play Johnny Silverhand in a computer version of the cyberpunk RPG. It sure sounds like science fiction to me. But that's the 80s for you. I knew this piece of hardware was heading my way, and I'd decided that was enough cyberpunk for me for now. Fear not, the use of white text on a black background is thankfully kept to a minimum throughout this sci-fi rulebook. Down the centuries, I've avoided translucent polyhedral dice sets. Within the space of a week, I'd taken delivery of 2 sets. This carbon game has the full cyber glitter going on. We'll come to the other set of dice in short order. Timing knocks the Jumpstarter kit out of the frame for this short series of mine. I'm seeing it going for around £25 out of stock or awaiting restock. It serves as a reintroduction to the new game that's coming out. At the moment, news of that is swirling around in the undertow caused by the production of the computer game. So who is the Jumpstarter kit for? Fans of the old game, new players, and gamers from actual cyberspace who want to try the MeatSpace version, I suppose. What else did I cast my view over that's not really here? Dragon Age, a quick start guide. I never played the computer game, and I have enough fantasy RPG stuff to get by on. This is downloadable though, so it will give you an idea of what you're getting into if considering the rulebook. I'll say this of the dice system from Green Ronin Publishing. There's a dedicated dicey mechanism in the game. You roll 3 6-siders. One is a dragon die. Make sure you can tell one of those from the other 2, a different colour or a different size. That's as complex as dedicated dice need to be. Work with what you have. Here's the one I'm not getting into, and I've printed out a rather easy-going page from the PDF. No one should have to go, boldly or otherwise, into a journey aboard the USS Blackpage deep in the White Font Nebula. Set phasers to fuck off, Mr. Worf. Here the distraught crew member is responding to a view of the page she is on and crimes against typesetting and design in the far-flung future. I don't even care what the system is like. The guide takes an irradiated page out of Starfinder's garish rulebook and runs away with it into a font named Kolos, writing of such eye-burning intensity that we dare not look at it lest we go insane. It's a negative from me, Captain. Here's the Essentials kit for 5th edition D&D. The production values are higher than those found in the starter set. That extends to the flimsy box versus the sturdier, glossier box on offer. The box continues the trend of announcing the 12+ age recommendation on the cover. On the back of the box, we have a departure from the standard description. This set is for a dungeon master and 1 to 5 players. Yes, you can run a game with 2 players. One is behind the screen as the dungeon master and the other handles player character action. You need to work on the scaling front to match a player to the challenge of going it alone in D&D. Partly, this is done by reducing the number of villains in each scene, though this kit adds an option we'll come to. Other games allow for this with far greater ease. I ran a game of Top Secret with the only player who turned up that night. It played out like a cheese-laden action movie. That was epic and awesome. I ran a game of Superworld with the only player who turned up that night. It played out like a superhero movie. That was epic and awesome. Cthulhu is built for low player counts. In other words, it doesn't matter how many people you throw against the tentacle monsters in a straight fight, the tentacle monsters win. So you aren't at any great disadvantage with fewer players in Cthulhu. I ran this starting Cthulhu adventure with groups and with individuals. Individual play was always spookier and more mysterious. D&D is designed for group play, but that won't stop you from running a game with only 2 people in the kitchen. This format emphasis on one dungeon master assisting the only person who turned up to play a game, coupled with the 12+ warning on the box, indicates that it's for a parent teaching a child how to tackle dungeons containing dragons. Let's talk about dice. I've managed to slide through the RPG world without owning translucent polyhedral dice sets. Until now, and what do you know, 2 sets come along at once. There are more dice in this box than there are in the starter set. For character creation, D&D caters to many options and tastes. Options and Tastes was a late TSR product with limited retail distribution. Today, the only surviving hardback copy rests in the hands of Vin Diesel, who uses it as a doorstop, and that is a role-playing fact. One option during character creation is to roll 4 6-siders and Orcus take the hindmost. It makes sense then to throw 4d6 into this set, with the call for 2 20-siders to fall on the table during an advantage or disadvantage roll. It's clear that this set needs 2d20. It's sadly still the case that the 12-sider is referred to as the unloved d12, and that really is a role-playing fact. With extra dice and sturdier components, the box is heavier than the earlier offerings was. Expect polyhedral sets to be larger in future, running with this trend and being marketed as D&D dice. Your 6 or 7 dice set didn't cut it before. You always need more dice and lots of them, and this 11 dice set carries the look of an instant classic lineup that'll make it standard across the hobby. As explained elsewhere, I know nothing of evil intergalactic dice cartel action. Forget what's new to this box, what's gone? The cardboard chaff, that pointless insert from the starter set designed to bolster the box. The consumers spoke, and the manufacturers heeded the call. There is a card insert, however, and it is protective. The Dungeon Master's screen. As you'd expect, there's wonderful thematic art on the outside and handy reference material inside. Here the wise, serene, peace-loving orcs are so caught up in worshipping sagely at the venerable shrine that they don't notice the foul approach of the evil party members, all filled with hatred and bile and bardic devilry. It's a one-sided battle, and I feel I must shield sensitive gamers from the prospect of unfolding carnage. Let's look behind the screen. For the price of the box, don't expect a sturdy bulletproof screen that'll hold back all but the mightiest of magic swords. This screen will protect you from small plastic dice lobbed by twitchy players. That much of a siege, and no more. It's a 4-panel screen that runs in an arc, and that's as much as you need. No zigzag construction. The arms race from 3-panel screen to 4-panel was a short-lived one. That 1-panel screen in a box from the Warhammer starter set is a grim and perilous detour down a road not travelled. There are heady tales of gamers who cobbled together 6-panel screens, but those need not concern us here. Time to wade through the cards provided with the set. For ease of detachment, bend the perforations in one direction and then the other. You'll save yourself a bit of bother. The initiative cards aren't vital, and that's from a veteran standpoint. They'll prove useful for absolute beginners. Calculating initiative and then dishing out cards for the countdown order is part of gaming ritual, should you opt for that. It'll give rookies something to focus on when there's a lot happening in an action sequence. Condition cards act as another memory focus for players who feel overwhelmed by the stuff that's happening in the very first game. There are official packs available for all sorts of aspects of role-playing game rules. This set throws handy memory joggers your way. Now we turn to that one hero adventure. It doesn't have to be that way. The players may pick up a sidekick while travelling, and this box caters to that event, softening the harshness of a one-character game somewhat. I see by the character names that they've been labelled in accordance with gaming rules. In other words, Donabella Fiasco and Pickled Pete are character names that would have fit right in alongside all the characters in all the games I've ever played. Name your own characters wisely, foolishly. It's your game. The box contains blank character sheets. Use a blank character sheet to give any sidekick more of a sense of being an actual character rather than a mere hit point sponge to save the player in a wobbly situation. Basic sidekick templates appear at the back of the rulebook. My coverage of magic item cards and quest cards must remain spoiler-free as they relate to the adventure. There were reference cards from the Warhammer RPG set that I didn't cover at all, as I felt the nature of the reference cards itself was too much of a spoiler to show in a video. Here it's D&D, and you must expect to uncover magic items during play. The whole point of the game is to go off on a quest, so that's a non-spoiler. You may feel you know the game front to back and back again and have no need of condition cards or magic item reminders. And that's fine. Memory prompts are just as useful to veterans as they are to rookies. Where to keep all these cards? In a very flat box. Brush up on your origami skills. Not too much. No batteries required. Glue not included as it isn't needed. Buying games is about buying storage for fiddly game components, and this set offers you that storage. Coming up with a setting for a game is easy. Writing an adventure is straightforward. I always found the most annoying thing was concocting maps. Here you have a map of the general area. For a starting game and beginning players, this is something to slap down on the table once you've rolled your dice into position and raised the DM's screen to signal the start of play. If there's one thing this set has, it's an abundance of focal points. What happens to your character while stunned? Here's a card. You have a sidekick in tow. This is what she looks like. Wondering what the countryside has in store? Here's your map to plan journeys around. Yes, the RPG is a game of the imagination, and I've played plenty of games that had nothing on the table but character sheets and dice. If we even used a table. This stuff is very handy for beginners. The map is hex-based, and you can use a token, a scale figure, even a die to mark the group's progress. On the flip side, there's a specific location map. This is worth talking about here. Starter set and Essentials kit are both located in the same general area. An experienced DM will find many ways to cobble two boxed adventures into a much larger story. But it's perfectly okay to tackle those boxes individually and in any order. Box advertising is minimal. There are codes for D&D Beyond, the online digital toolbox for those who want to tread that path. Now for a quick word about character sheets. Here they are, blank. No pre-generated approach here, though you could take pre-generated characters from the starter set and mix them into this with little difficulty. I find it strange that there's a space for character name on both sides of the character sheet, as if players might forget the information when switching to the back. Not enough room for equipment, but there are plenty of spaces that can be co-opted for all that if need be. The two books are square-bound, demonstrating an improvement over the earlier set's flimsier stapled copies. This time around, the adventure book loses the table of contents on the front page, and that is safe to show you without spoiling every dramatic revelation. I fear there's a dragon in there somewhere. Spoiler alert, expect that in Dungeons and Dragons. This rulebook is not the full set of rules, and that is, of course, the point of a beginner set. But you are creating characters this time around, rather than reaching for pre-generated ones as in the original starter set. You'll have plenty to get by on if this is your first stab at absorbing RPG rules. If the DM is all out of handy reference cards for conditions, there's still a useful back-page reference sheet. As to the adventure book, of course I won't spoil it. I've left the combat reference cards until last, as combat should be your last resort. So much of the game is based around dealing with combat that beginners may be forgiven for thinking that's all there is to the game. Veteran D&D players stick to the same page of the rules when describing the game's history. In earlier versions of the game, play was not all about hack and slash, contrary to the myth that's grown up in the interim. One of the most useful techniques in D&D was running away from combat and living to fight another day. This remains one of the most useful techniques for preserving your character. Retreat, regroup, reorganize, and resume the attack from a position of strength that includes more knowledge of your opponents. There's your D&D Essentials kit. As I record the video, it's only just been freshly released from captivity into the gaming wild. I think we'll look back on this as an improvement on the concept of the beginner box and the starter set generally. This one is a fraction of the cost of buying all 3 standard rulebooks and is well worth the price of admission. Rules, adventure, map cards, screen, dice, what do you add? Your imagination. And that's true of all the starter sets and beginner boxes featured in this series. You still have to do the work of imagining things, organising players and setting a cloth down on that kitchen table and adding spare dice for that player. Games change, editions come and go. Players are the same the world over.